Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and there's quite a few things to talk about this week with iPadOS 19's possible redesign, as well as updates to iPhone Fold and much more. This is your weekly Apple News update for the week of April 15th, 2025. Now, good news this week for Apple, as the expected tariffs have recently been exempted for iPhones, Macs, and many other devices. This is for computers and other displays and SSDs. However, there could be some changes to this in the near future, but at least the prices won't go up immediately anyway. Now, despite many being negative about Apple lately, they just hit the top sales of the first quarter for global smartphone sales. Apple has 19% of the market share, and Samsung dropped down to 18%. Also, it seems that it was bumped up due to the release of the iPhone 16e. Many said it wasn't really a great phone, but it has a great battery and lower price, which is the most important thing to many, along with the camera. So it makes a lot of sense that it would sell well in different parts around the world, but either way, it looks like they've bumped up to the winning place for the first quarter for the first time ever. More products have been recently added to Apple's vintage list, and you can see the latest one here is iPhone 6s. So the 6s is no longer considered something that Apple supports, along with the 2018 Mac Mini. I'll link this list in the description below, though, if you'd like to check it out for yourself. Apple's next earnings call is on May 1st, 2025 at 2 p.m. Pacific Time or 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, I'll link this in the description below, but you can listen live if you'd like to and see all of the details about their financial results for Q2 2025. Apple also announced 5 new Apple Arcade games recently. You can see What the Clash, an exciting addition to the award-winning What the Game series, as well as some others. So I'll link this in the description as well, but My Buddy by Nilo Inc., as well as Lego Friends, Heart Like Rush Plus by Story Toys, and much more. So again, Apple keeps filling the Apple Arcade catalog, and these will be available fairly soon. Beats Today has launched a new line of charging cables. They come in a few different colors, such as black, white, or sugar stone as they call it, and rapid red for $18.99. There's a couple other variants as well, but it's odd seeing them go from someone that makes headphones, both in-ear and over-the-ear, to someone that now makes iPhone cases and cables. So it's a little odd, but either way, they look pretty nice, and they're fairly reasonable as far as the price compared to others. Let me know if you plan to pick one up in the comments below. Apple this week shared a story of a person who was swimming and the current carried him 1.5 kilometers from the shore. He was able to be saved thanks to emergency SOS on the watch, as well as being able to call from the watch for help. So Apple actually posted this on the Apple Australia website. It's called Rick's Rescue, and I'll link it in the description below. In the USA, iPhone currently dominates all other devices, and that is especially true when it comes to teens in the USA. A recent survey by Piper Sandler found that 88% of teens in the USA said they own an iPhone, and the same amount said they plan to purchase iPhone as their next device, despite all the other devices out there. Some of this has to do with iMessage having the blue bubble versus the green bubble, but either way, for those of you outside the United States, that's why iMessage is so heavily used here in the USA by many teens as well as everyone else. Now, Apple has already said they delayed the expected Siri features. A new report by the New York Times claims that those features will be available in the fall this year. That puts them around the time of the iOS 19 launch, and I would be surprised if it's true, but hopefully Apple has figured out and made things work as expected. And as I mentioned in the weekend follow-up video, it seems that Apple has showed off the demo of the context-aware Siri at WWDC, and it surprised many, even on the Siri team, as they'd not even started working on the feature or were aware of that feature. The demo seems that it was fake and not something Apple would normally do, so I actually said this was unacceptable this past weekend, and hopefully iOS 19 leads them back in the right direction, and they're not advertising features such as Apple Intelligence that aren't available yet. So hopefully they get things right by this fall, but let me know what you would want most from Siri. As far as weekly Apple deals, when it comes to AirPods Pro 2, it looks like AirPods are on perpetual discount, so I'll place these in the description below. They seem to be less than what you can get them at the Apple Store, so be sure to check them out there if you're wanting to pick some up. There's also deals on MacBook Air M4 as well as M4 iPad Pro and other devices as well this week, so I'll link all of those in the description if you're interested. Now, as far as releases this week, well, just today, Apple released iOS 18.5 Public Beta 1 finally. However, it's the same as Developer Beta 2. Apple does this from time to time, and it's quite confusing. So when the next Developer Beta comes out, we'll have Public Beta 2, but that will be Developer Beta 3. So just keep that in mind, but they're the same exact thing as far as build numbers and everything else. And I would expect iOS 18.5 Beta 3 as soon as next week. Typically, when we get from Beta 2 to Beta 3, we switch to maybe a bi-weekly cycle to a weekly cycle. However, we may not see that until Beta 4. It just depends what Apple decides to do. We also expect iOS 18.4.1 very soon to fix some bugs with things such as CarPlay and other issues, and we've seen that in analytics, and it looks like it's going to launch very soon as Apple stopped signing iOS 18.3.2, leaving only one update available to downgrade to with iOS 18.4. So we could see that as soon as this week or sometime next week. Also, iOS 18.6 is in the works as MacRumors has seen it in their analytics, and of course, Apple is really focused on iOS 19 at this point. We'll see the first version on June 9th at WWDC 2025, with Beta 1 releasing typically that day after the keynote, and then having betas and updates all throughout the summer, and then a public release alongside the next iPhone. So usually the second or third week of September. So if Apple keeps the same update sort of cadence, we should see the same release schedule this time around, and hopefully we'll see some major changes. One area we do expect to see some major changes, though, according to Mark Gurman this week, is with iPadOS. It seems Apple has been very busy for quite some time, and they're working on lots of their operating systems now. iPadOS 19 is said to be getting an overhaul to make it more Mac-like. This is great news if you've been wanting to use your iPad instead of a Mac and just found it had quite a few shortcomings, and Mark Gurman said it will improve overall productivity, multitasking, and window management. So not only should it get a visual update to match that of iOS 19 and macOS 16, we can expect some major updates, hopefully for better file system access, things like that. That's where it really seems to lack at this point. Everything else is pretty good, but when you go to use desktop browsers, you can't really use them because we're running an iOS-based operating system, and everything's basically using a version of Safari. Hopefully this changes greatly with iPadOS 19. We also could see some small changes with watchOS 12 to match that of iOS 19 and iPadOS 19 and macOS, and this is due to a recent leak. However, we may or may not see that, but I wouldn't expect a major overhaul with watchOS 12, just some visual updates as well. Now, John Prosser had said with the iPhone 17 Pro to expect it to have a dual camera recording capability. You could use the rear camera along with the front-facing camera using iOS 19, where we could record at the same time. We've seen this with different apps such as Filmic Pro, and many other phones allow this already, but this would be the first time Apple would allow it to work natively in their camera app. So this would be great, being able to record the rear-facing camera, front-facing camera, all at the same time, edit those together in one video, so you could see reactions to things and more. We also expect it to have an aluminum frame this year, a new back design with a camera tray. I've shown this from Sonny Dixon before, where we have sort of a prototype look or a dummy unit look, along with updated 48 megapixel telephoto sensors, 24 megapixel front-facing sensor, 8K video, 12 gigs of RAM, and an A19 with improved cooling. Also Apple's own Wi-Fi and 5G chipset. So all of those are expected for the iPhone 17 Pro, along with a new Air model and much more. Apple is still working on a folding phone, which is no real surprise at this point, seeming how they're the only ones without one for the most part. And Instant Digital this week on Weibo has said that the next year's folding phone is expected to cost between $2,100 and $2,300 to start. It's slightly more than what we have in the market with different folding phones, but in line with what we have with the Pixel Fold or Pixel 9 Pro Fold, along with other devices. And the folding display is said to be of a Samsung display, which isn't really a surprise as they're currently providing the main displays for many different devices and their own line of phones. However, Business Korea says this week that Apple will exclusively use Samsung displays for its upcoming foldable. One other thing to note is it said that the folding iPhone will not have Face ID under the display, according to Digital Chat Station on Weibo. This could mean we get a cutout with Face ID, similar to what we have with the Dynamic Island or a notch, and in the fold-out display, maybe we'll have something similar to a cutout as well. However, Apple could abandon that entirely and just use Touch ID. It works well on the Pixel 9 Pro Fold, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that on an iPhone Fold. I wouldn't mind it at all, but I know some people would miss Face ID. Now, when it comes to iPhone, well, Apple is working on a 20th anniversary iPhone. Last week, we talked about how Apple was planning a 20th anniversary iPhone, and this was according to Mark Gurman. With the iPhone X, Apple introduced Face ID, but the 20th anniversary edition, Apple seems to be planning an all-screen iPhone. Maybe they'll put the sensors under the display finally and eliminate any cutout for Face ID or the camera, but still have those options available. Either way, I would love to see Apple figure this out at this point. Maybe it will be an all-glass iPhone or something special. Apple is still said to be working on foldables that have to do with larger displays as well, similar to an iPad. Apple is apparently planning on a 19-inch display, according to analyst Jeff Poo. This would go into production sometime in 2026 and be for sale at that point once it's shown. So I would love to see a giant iPad that folds up. That's where I think that would be most useful. I don't really care for it in a phone as much. Sometimes it's helpful, but I would like a larger display to do that. I think that could be something a little bit different. Now this weekend, Mark Gurman shared that Apple is working on a lighter and less expensive version of Vision Pro. The Vision Pro is quite heavy if you've used one. It's very nice to use, but it's quite heavy on your face. I can use it for about 2 hours until I start to really feel the overall weight of it, but they are working on a lighter and less expensive version. There's 2 versions in the works, and one of them has the ability to connect to a wired device, it seems. This might be similar to what we have with MetaQuest that allows you to play intensive video games on a PC connected directly to it and allows for lower latency, maybe using it with a Mac. So that's something I would welcome if it was lightweight, maybe powered off a Mac, and you could use it as your monitor. A leak earlier in the week said that Vision Pro 2 is already in production and set to release later in 2025. I would definitely welcome that if it was lighter and less expensive and hopefully more durable. Mine is cracked here on the band for whatever reason. I'm very careful with it, but it's just cracked from regular use. Mark Gurman also said that Tim Cook is focused on beating Meta to AR glasses, and Apple is said to be working on glasses that are similar to what Meta offers already, but doesn't have augmented reality just yet. They could have cameras and some version of Siri, but then also we could later get augmented reality glasses. That's where I think this technology would be really great. I think currently this is a little bit lacking. There's not a whole lot of content, and you can use it as a display, but I'm not really crazy about using this regularly. And anyone I know that has this typically just sets it away until a new immersive content releases. So at this point, I think it's a nice device, but I don't see it really going anywhere until it's AR glasses. And so that's everything this week with Apple's upcoming products. Of course, I'm looking most forward to seeing iOS 19 if it is a full redesign with different icons, new interactions, and more. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.